It's time for the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in another edition of the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, talking shop in Districts 1 and 2, week in, week out. Brandon Baney joined by our North Idaho expert, Ryan Scaggs. What's up, Scaggs?
Dude, it's a coffee kind of day. I tell you what, I feel like I need to turn on some grunge music.
It's been so we both live in the Coeur d'Alene area. It's been pretty gray for like the last 2.5 days. Just not, dude. It poured yesterday, man. It was raining hard here.
It was pouring this morning.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I went to go grab the garbage cans yesterday and got soaked just walking outside for about 30 seconds.
My garbage day's on Thursday, so I'm fingers crossed that it dries out by then. I don't want to have to go.
Yeah, it should be drying out hopefully for the games on Friday. So that's the hope at least.
Definitely. And of course, you and I both work from home, so we don't have to leave the house if we don't want to. So
right. Yeah,
yes.
Just make more coffee.
That's right. Make more coffee for sure. Okay, so it's always great when you start a podcast talking about the weather. I've always said that. That's really thrilling content. So
I talked about grunge music. I mean, go through you go through my library right now if you wanted to.
Coffee and grunge music. There's our podcast title.
Yeah. Fitting,
okay.
Coeur d'Alene having to play in Seattle last week. So
yes. And we will get to all of the great football matchups that are coming up this weekend because we'll finally start figuring out some stuff in the hierarchy. But before we get to that, volleyball action has been heating up as well. Post Falls, Coeur d'Alene, Lake City, Lakeland, even down to the 2As and 1As. Really good stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean, last night you had Post Falls beat Lewiston in straight sets. Post Falls goes to 20-3 overall. They're undefeated in league play. They're going to play in the Linda Sheridan this weekend in Spokane, a huge tournament. Likely crash course that you're going to see them play probably 2 of the top 5 teams in the state of Washington. So a huge test for the Trojans to see how it shakes up there. If they're able to get like a top 4 finish there, I mean, that's going to bode very well in the reflection at the state volleyball level. I mean, we still have to go through districts and they still have to go through Lake City and Coeur d'Alene too. But looking at just what Post Falls has been able to do so far in the court, man, they're if they're not a dark horse favorite, they're a definite favorite for that 5A title. They're right in the mix for sure.
Yes, and when you look at the Max Preps rankings, I've already started to do that across the various sports. Post Falls checks in at number 3 in 5A, only behind Eagle and Madison. Now, Coeur d'Alene is sitting there at 7, and I'll have to double check and clarify, but the IHSAA held their board meeting yesterday for September, and they did approve using district tournament results in the Max Preps rankings that are used to seed teams at state. Now, I don't know if that's going to be starting with volleyball and soccer or if they're going to wait until next year. I need clarification on that. But if they are keeping those district tournament results, Post Falls maybe could vault up by playing Coeur d'Alene so many times at districts, right? Or vice versa.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if Lake City continues a trend upward too, that's certainly going to boost rankings. I mean, and you look at Lakeland. I mean, having played Lakeland, a 4A team that's been playing really well lately as well, that's certainly going to help rankings also. So it makes things interesting. If they're able to include district tournament play, definitely a huge lift I look at for, Post Falls and Coeur d'Alene both if you get some shocking results from the district tournament.
Definitely. And so we'll keep an eye on that. And then let's talk about at the 2A level, Ryan. Kellogg has been just kind of rolling along all season long, but big battle with St. Mary's this weekend.
After the Lumberjacks show up kind of after, I would say, the events that have taken place in St. Mary's over the last week, a bit of a spirited effort from the Lumberjacks and getting a big win over Kellogg, 3 sets to 1. That's a huge win for the Lumberjacks. They're handing the Tigers their first loss, the Wildcats their first loss. So, looking at that, bodes well towards district tournament play again. I mean, it's going to help with seeding and who gets to play Orfino or Grangeville in that first round, and certainly makes and Priest River for that matter too. But it's gonna be interesting. I think how things shake out in that conference. I mean, you could see that realistically as the league championship match, possibly, or the district championship match between those two programs. But St. Mary's definitely on the upswing in 2A volleyball.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how that has all transpired. They played earlier this year, and Kellogg won by a 3-1 margin, and so now to get reversed, they basically split. And so I don't know how they determine the number 1 seed there, but either way, both teams are going to be fighting hard. And I still think, I don't know, I kind of like Orofino as a sneaky dark horse team. If they could get hot, they're 5-4, they're 1-3 in the league. They've kind of taken their lumps against Kellogg and St. Mary's already, but I don't know. I'm still keeping an eye on the Maniacs there as well.
Yeah, I mean, it could certainly make things interesting, and I think anything goes once you hit district play, as we've seen the last few years. That pretty much every classification, don't count anybody out that last weekend. So
that's right. At the 1A D1 level, Ryan, we've been talking a lot about Troy this year, and for rightly so. They are kind of the premier power in 1A D1 volleyball, favorites to win state again this year. We talked about a couple weeks ago, Jolie Eklund, I think it was, had 25 serves. She served the entire. She went 25-0 basically on serves against Lapway, which is just insane. But also over in District 1, we've quietly had a good race this year between Genesis Prep and Wallace. And Wallace, by knocking off G Prep again earlier this week, clinched the regular season title at 3-0 in league. Wallace is 9-0 on the season. They haven't lost anybody yet.
Genesis Prep is at 11-4. I mean, they're having a solid season too. And Wallace was able to get the decider there and win 3-2 last night. So a big win for the Miners there. And, getting that league championship certainly helps with the seeding and the favorable seeding come district time. And once again, when we look at it, it's going to come down to that last weekend. And, I think both these teams are worthy, but man, you talk about Wallace and what they've been able to do this year, quietly just being, the steady stalwart up north in District 1. They've been dominant, and I know they're hoping to see that continue and maybe turn into some hardware come the state tournament.
Yeah, so Wallace sweeps the season series with G Prep, and again, this district gets a full bid to state, not like 2 years ago where the champion
played the number 4 from District 2.
Yeah, which stunk for sure. So congrats to Wallace there in volleyball. Let's go to the soccer pitch quickly. I did notice, we've been talking about St. Mary's a lot here over the past couple of days on the Prepcast. I did see they finally got to play on their new on-campus soccer complex.
Yeah.
They had played in the old city park there, which is right on the main drag there in St. Mary's for so long. But now they've got their own on-campus facility. Took a lot of behind-the-scenes work to get the funding and then also get it ready to play. And it was cool. On Saturday, boys and girls got to play their first matches there.
Yeah, that's a sweet facility, and I know that it took a lot of effort, and the Potlatch Delta Corporation was huge and pivotal in acquiring that property and being able to turn that into an awesome facility for not just soccer but also baseball and softball too. So they're able to have everything right there on campus, which is awesome. And being able to have a facility like that, 2A ranks is going to be certainly pretty great for that school and for that community.
Definitely. In terms of soccer, district brackets will be coming out soon. I got to figure out how they're doing things in the Intermountain League, because Coeur d'Alene Charter in particular has had a couple of matches get wiped out due to rain earlier this year. I don't know if they're making those up. How are they counting that in the standings? I need some clarification there with Coeur d'Alene Charter specifically, only because their girls and boys teams are near the top of the standings, and that could have an impact on how things go. Bonners Ferry,
listening, hit us up.
Yes, specifically Coeur d'Alene Charter had matches against Priest River and St. Mary's. get wiped out. So yeah, it's probably 2 wins for them, but you never know in soccer. So you can't just assume that either. So I don't know. I gotta try and figure it. It's on my list of 10 million things to do. And so we'll see if I get clarification there or not. I wanted to talk cross country real quick, Ryan. The Coeur d'Alene boys went over to Missoula last Saturday for the Big Mountain West Invitational. This is one of the biggest meets. It is the biggest meet of the year in Montana. One of the biggest in kind of our area, this tri-state area. But Coeur d'Alene boys go over and win the team championship. Way to go, Vikings.
Yeah, super impressive effort from them. And, just looking at, courses and everything like that, and running at elevation and everything too, it's certainly helpful and bodes well for the postseason success. But I know that, the distance runners in this area have kind of sleepily been under the radar a little bit, and kind of criminally so. I mean, we talk a lot of distance running, I believe, in girls track, especially with what Post Falls has been able to do the last 4 or 5 years. But this Coeur d'Alene team is quietly putting something together that's really special. So it'll be interesting to see how things go through at the state level this year with the cross country meet this fall.
Yeah, and Coeur d'Alene, they won pretty convincingly, 45 points. Next closest was the Bozeman Hawks at 75. So that's a 30-point margin in cross country, which is a blowout in cross country terms. Jacob King takes 3rd overall for the Vikings, 15 minutes, 40.96 seconds. And then Max Servey Skinner took 4th. So they went back to back there for the Vikings. So way to go, Coeur d'Alene boys. The Coeur d'Alene girls were over there competing as well. They took 6th in the competition. The top team actually from Idaho was Preston. Preston took 4th. And so that gives you an idea of what this competition is, because if you look at on the girls side, Preston went up and competed. Soda Springs went up and competed, and those are 2 teams that are expecting to win their respective state championships this year at 4A girls and 2A girls. And so if they're traveling all the way to Missoula for this competition, it's high quality caliber opponents. So that makes Coeur d'Alene's performance even more impressive, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's better than running on, XYZ golf course locally.
Yes, and this was held at the University of Montana golf course.
It's where they had Big Sky, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was 3 years ago they had the Big Sky meet there. So it's a collegiate course.
Yes, and it used to be, I don't know if it still is, but one of the cheapest places in town that you can get around a golf in. So I've got a special spot as somebody who doesn't have a ton of scratch. I appreciate the U of M golf course for sure. Okay, so that's cross country. Golf is heating up as well. We talked about Molly Siley last week. She won another invite over the weekend. Sandpoint hosted their invite earlier this week, and now we're into districts. I mean, it is going to be like this weekend, early next week, and then we're at state. It's crazy.
Yeah, and 5A state, I believe, is being held in Lewiston this year. So, if I'm not mistaken, and I think they're hosting also the district tournament too. So, the playing golf in Lewiston in October, you're going to get some decent conditions. Let's put it that way. I think they made the smart choice moving the tournament to Lewiston this fall, if that they're indeed holding suit. But yeah, it's going to be interesting as things go down the stretch. And I know that the Bengals are really high on their chances of at least getting a state medalist or a podium finish. So, and then certainly the Coeur d'Alene boys, I look at them on that side, looking for a competitive finish as well.
Yeah, state is up north this year, Ryan. 5A, as you mentioned, is in Lewiston at the country club there. 4A is at the University of Idaho Golf Club,
which they've redone a few holes. So that's actually not a bad choice. They've thrown some money at that course a little bit. It's not quite what it used to be. Like you said, the cheapest place in town to get around a golf. I remember my days on the Palouse. That was where you go because you didn't want to throw $75 on a cheap day going to Palouse Ridge, which is a great course, mind you. But yeah, the University of Idaho is better than it used to be. That's for sure.
Yes. The Inland Empire meet, the district tournament for 5A is tomorrow. We're recording this Wednesday, the 28th, or Wednesday, the 27th, Thursday, the 28th at the at Lewiston Country Club. You're right. So they're going to go play there for that'll give them a huge leg up, right?
Well, walking the course all together. Yeah. I think anybody in the North that's going to qualify for state, that's going to be a huge benefit to be able to play that course the week before state. And, it'll be interesting to see where they place the holes, and the hole placement's certainly going to come into play on some of the holes there, because they do have a few tricky holes, but a few long, par fives too. So, I mean, that course is pretty fun. I mean, we've seen some criminally low scores there in the past. So I wouldn't be surprised to see, the medalists shooting, 5-6 under.
Yeah. And 4A district tournament is tomorrow as well, the 28th, and they're doing the same thing. They're going to the U of I Golf Club in Moscow. And I think that's just a no-brainer, right?
Yeah, that's a smart decision.
For sure. So we'll have district golf updates for you next week here on the Prepcast. But let's get into the football here, because this is we have arrived. We are finally, some conferences have already had conference play, right? But we are really into the first big chunk of, okay, we're going to start to figure out where everybody stands in this hierarchy. I think we have to start in the White Pine League at the 1AD1 level, because Logos and Potlatch have been on this collision course all year. They both come in undefeated. This game is Friday night in Potlatch. Only one team will emerge unscathed, and the winner of that game will be in the driver's seat for the regular season White Pine League title.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at that. I mean, there's two huge games in the White Pine League this weekend.
Yes.
And, but that one obviously is the marquee matchup. You kind of equate this to week 5 of SEC play, where you start seeing the Titans start colliding, where you get a LSU Georgia the same weekend, or sorry, LSU and Alabama playing, and then you get Georgia playing Tennessee the same weekend. These are just some huge juggernaut matchups, and this Logos Potlatch game is going to be super interesting. And Logos, we've seen them offensively just absolutely short out the scoreboard. Defensively they've been just as good, if not better. So playing a really tough, scrappy Potlatch team, I mean, Potlatch is going to have to realistically hold Logos under 40 points, I think, if they're going to expect to have a chance in this one, because I don't know if Potlatch's offense is going to be able to match pace with what Logos can do. And defensively, I think Logos is going to get you there, at least on what they merit-wise are able to do defensively, enforcing turnovers.
Now, in every Potlatch game this year, they have had multiple takeaways and usually a defensive touchdown or two mixed in there. Yeah. So I'm wondering if their penchant for getting the ball will help them offset some of that. But the Potlatch offense is nothing to sneeze at either. We talk a lot about Jack Driscoll, right, for Logos. There's another Jack who's kind of quietly going about his business, Jack Clark for Potlatch, and he's kind of the trigger man for that offense. And with the Marshall brothers and some of the great linemen they've got up front, I think this is going to be a really fun game. It's going to be a shootout. I think now watch it be 12-6 or something. I
look at this game, and realistically, these are both teams that win the first weekend in the state playoffs. I realistically look at both of these teams as a team that can get a first weekend win. I just look at that Logos offense that you have it hit. If it's a sloppy field, it's going to play towards the Loggers' hand a little bit and trying to slow things down. But I mean, Logos' defense, like we talked about with forcing turnovers, they're going to keep them in the game. Even if their offense is stalling out, they're going to stay in the game just because they're the way their defense plays. So it's going to be a crazy interesting affair. Potlatch, if they run the ball effectively and play a defense with their offense, limiting the possessions of Logos, and you get a takeaway or two, that's your recipe for success for the Loggers in this one.
Yeah, and so if Logos wins this game, they are in a really good spot with only 2 remaining games. And then they have to play Prairie still. Logos does. So, nothing's guaranteed. But you look at Potlatch, and if they win, okay, they've already beaten Prairie, but they've got to play Kamei still. And so could we have this where Potlatch beats Logos and then Kamei beats Potlatch, and then we got this crazy 3-way tie at the top? That would be, I don't want to think about that. I like
Kamei's got to get through Prairie this weekend though.
Yes. So. And that was going to be my next pivot point here, is you've got the top 2 teams in the standings competing, but you've also got 3rd and 4th competing this week in Prairie and Kamei, and the winner of this game significantly gets a leg up here, Ryan, because here's what happened last year. Last year for the 1AD1 postseason, there were 2 automatic bids from the White Pine League. Kamei and Clearwater Valley got those. And then statewide, there was basically 6 at-large bids that were awarded to the rest of the field.
Yeah.
And the White Pine only got one of those, and that was Lapway.
Mm-hmm.
And we are looking at a similar, maybe the White Pine gets 4 teams in this year, but I think at least 3. And so Prairie, Kamei, the loser of this game, might have to sweat it out a little bit in terms of do they get into the playoffs, which is crazy to think about.
If Kamei beats Prairie and Logos beats Potlatch, I think that the White Pine gets 3. If Prairie beats Kamei and Kamei is able to sneak one out against, say, Potlatch the following couple weeks, like, I think the White Pine could get 4. I mean, realistically, look at that it's going to take, I think, a little bit of a weird mix-up in order to get 4 teams out of the conference just based on the rankings and the remaining schedule that's there. But realistically, it's not out of the question for 4 teams to come out of this conference. I think that that's realistically very possible. I think Kamei is going to get a little bit of credit in the rankings because of playing in the state championship game last year with returning some, many key players from that team. That game, that Prairie Kamei game, I think could be the best game of the weekend. I mean, realistically, you look at what both teams are bringing to the table. That's like your black and blue game. That's going to, if they're playing a little bit of mud down there in Kamei, that's going to get real interesting real fast in that game.
Yes, and I misspoke. This year, the White Pine gets 3 auto bids, which is which is comforting, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's only 3 at-large bids available. And when you start looking at, okay, who's going to take those at-large bids? Whoever finishes second between Butte County and Grace, book it, because that league only gets 1 bid. So
if Kendrick blows the doors off of Butte County this weekend too, I think there's some outside implications on that one. That I know that it's a cross, classification game, but you don't want to let a team beat you twice necessarily. You look at the remaining schedule for Butte County. There's not an easy road for them, and I know that you're going to talk about that probably in the 8-man Prepcast, but I don't want to be too big of a prognosticator, but there's some like outside implications with that Kendrick game for the 1A D1 picture, just based on what they're able to do to Butte County if they're able to blow the doors off of them.
Yeah. So one of those bids is going to Butte County or Grace. So now you're talking about you're fighting for basically 2 at-large spots.
And you look up north. I mean, realistically, between Lakeside and then you have. Sorry, that's 182. So never mind. Forget that.
But they're going to be competing against District 4, which has
Correct.
Oakley and Murtaugh and Valley and I don't know. It's win.
Yeah, no, that's really. I mean, realistically, it comes down to it. And you look at the favorable schedules of what's left. I mean, Logos has some tougher games, I think, remaining between Potlatch and Prairie still, but. Potlatch, look at the remaining schedule, and I believe that they've still got Kamei and Logos looming. And then you look at Kamei with what they've got. I mean, it's like, there's no easy weeks now in the last 3 weeks of the season in the White Pine League. Everybody's going to have to play 2 really difficult games. So, there's not a lot of room to mix up. You don't want to go 0 in your last 3 weeks. Like, you're out. Sorry. See you later.
That's right. Okay, 1A D2. Kendrick is playing Butte County. This is a Friday game at I think 3:30. They keep changing the kickoff time, so it may have changed by the time you're listening to this. So check IdahoSports.com for the most up-to-date info. But it's another neutral site game. Kendrick is meeting Butte County. They're playing at Middleton High School. We will have the broadcast on IdahoSports.com Friday afternoon. So
you get a little double dip, some double headers here on IdahoSports.com.
Yes, that's a great way to start off your Friday before you watch whatever else is going on. So that'll be a lot of fun for sure. 1A D2, speaking of, Lewis County really opened some eyes, shutting out Lakeside last week, 48-0. I was very surprised by that. Gage Crow returned the opening kickoff for a touchdown and then scored 6 rushing touchdowns. He scored all 7 TDs for the Eagles.
Have yourself a week, young man. And then, they've got a game with Tri-Valley this weekend. So you look at them and what they're able to do and get some wins coming down the stretch. They could look at realistically making the claim for that number 2 out of District 2 as well. So Lewis County could find their way back into the playoffs again. Yeah.
So basically Kendrick, lock it up. And then there's a second auto bid to the playoffs, and it's going to come down to, I believe, Lewis County and Deary, they play on Friday the 13th, Friday the 13th of October, in Highland or in Craigmont. So that to me will determine the second bid to the postseason from District 2. From District 1, it's just about decided, Scaggs, because Clark Fork just lost to Mullen last week, 20-12. Clark Fork, the way they run their offense this year is they run the clock down to like 1 on every play. And they know that, hey, we have some high octane teams in our conference. We need to be perfect on offense and limit possessions. And it almost worked against Mullen St. Regis. They had the ball. They were driving late. They were actually leading or down 2 or whatever happened. They were in control to win the game. They fumbled inside the 20-yard line. Mullen St. Regis gets it back. They go downfield and score the game-winning touchdown with about a minute and change remaining, and so they lose 20-12. Real heartbreaker. But Clark Fork has now lost to Mullen St. Regis twice this year. They've already lost to Lakeside in a game we did on IdahoSports.com. So unless Clark Fork can beat Lakeside in the rematch, which comes in the regular season finale, October 20th in Clark Fork, to try and force a tie with Lakeside for that second spot. And Lakeside still plays Mullen St. Regis twice, right? So there's some
this weekend,
Yes, but unless Clark Fork really starts banking some wins, they're in trouble, and it's looking like Lakeside and Mullen St. Regis will get those 2 spots.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a telling game. I mean, they're playing at Lakeside on the turf. That's going to be a good game. I mean, Mullen coming down and making the trip down I-90. And, it'll be I see a good game. I hope, Lakeside shows up offensively. They didn't last week. I mean, that was just, to get blanked like that after winning such a good game against Clark Fork the prior week. It's going to be really interesting to see how things shake out between Mullen and Lakeside this week. And, obviously we still got some 3A, 4A, and 5A games to talk about. But with the small school football, there is a ton of implications going on this weekend.
As I am broadcasting, Ryan, there is a spider coming down from my ceiling. It is right in front of me on its spider web. It's dangling. So
do you hate spiders?
They don't bother me, but
let's kill it.
Oh yeah, let me see. I don't have any tissues here or anything. I gotta grab a piece of paper.
Here's some show notes.
All right. Oh no!
Now you won't see him again.
Okay, I got him. This happened to me yesterday too, as I was working, and that one did get away. Maybe it's the same one.
Huh.
Anyways, hey, never a dull moment on the North Idaho Prepcast.
You sat back and I thought your computer monitor froze again or something like that, and then you're like,
no, it was like it was gonna crawl on the mic. I think it was coming down, and anyways, one last note about Clark Fork. Like I'm like not happy if I'm them, because Kootenai has canceled their season due to low numbers, which sucks, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But because Kootenai was on everybody's schedule this year, they loaded up and did the double, round robin conference thing again. And the way the schedule shook out, Clark Fork had to play Mullen St. Regis in the season opener and play them a second time in September still. Well, they're supposed to play Kootenai this week. That got canceled. Then they had their bye. So they're off for 2 weeks before they get to play again. And they're like, man, why couldn't we have just gotten Kootenai out of the way early and played Mullen St. Regis later in the year? Just one of those unfortunate things.
Yeah, one of those deals that you really don't have much control over. And with the low numbers and everything else, I know Kootenai's trying their best to keep that program moving in the right direction. But, sometimes it's just out of your control. But, yeah. I mean, that's the life of playing 1A D2 football sometimes.
That's right. 2A football, I think, remains unchanged. It comes down to St. Mary's and Grangeville next Friday, October 6th. That game will be in St. Mary's. When you start looking at one team gets in automatically, others can compete for at-large bids. I don't know. It'll be tough for a second team to get in, because each team is taking it on the chin a little bit in non-conference play. Although we did see last year the league got 2 teams in, right? Kellogg and St. Mary's both got in, so nothing's impossible there. 3A football this week, Ryan. We've got I mean, this is the game to me. That not just in North Idaho, but this is the game statewide. I think that people want to see. It's a game you're going to be at with Lance Taylor on IdahoSports.com Friday night, 7:00. Timberlake hosting Sugar Salem in a non-conference battle.
Yeah, and that's you talk about, because Timberlake's they're locked to a single game that like dictates their season as far as necessarily getting to host a playoff game that first weekend. But you look at what they've done. They're 4-2 overall. They've played a pretty difficult schedule. They've played up a ton as far as classifications go. They're coming into this game against a juggernaut Sugar Salem team, the team that's only giving up 6.8 points per game. I mean, good grief, come on. You're only giving up a touchdown per game. I think they average like 48. So this is an offense. This is a team offensively that can just light up the scoreboard. But you look at Timberlake and what they're able to do. I mean, the three-headed rushing attack that they've got, Mettinger at quarterback is going to be solid as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see if they can defensively clamp down and slow down Sugar's rushing attack. Limit maybe a couple possessions, but they're going to have to capitalize when they get the ball. They're going to have to be able to get drives put together. If they have something stall out, it can't be 3 and out. It's going to have to go a couple first downs before they're either punting the ball away or turning it over on downs or, attempting a field goal or something of that nature. But they're going to have to put together some drives in order to limit Sugar's touches because, Sugar's going to get those TDs. But, I look at it being a competitive game. I think at halftime, realistically, it's going to be a really close game. It could be a one-possession game at the half. I think if it's going to be Sugar, they're going to pull away late. If it's Timberlake, they're going to sneak it on maybe the last possession or two.
Yeah, Sugar Salem averages 277 yards rushing per game, which is, Timberlake's right up there too. And then defensively as well, very stingy defensively. They are allowing only, I think it's like 10 points per game or something like that. It's crazy. They've already had
under 10. It's under 7. Last I looked, I think it was 6.8 was what it was. So
there you go. And they've had 15 sacks this year in like 5 games. That's like 3 a night. So those old linemen bring your lunch pail. Yeah,
some of the scheduling is, but at the same time, they've been taking care of business. They've been taking teams to the woodshed like they're supposed to. So I look at Sugar, and I'm not going to slight them. They're the favorite. They're the defending state champs. Let's all bets aside, Sugar's a really, really good team. It's going to take Timberlake's uncommon, great effort Friday night to come away with a victory in this one. And I think that if you can keep it close, that's going to be a really good indicator of how the end of the season is going to go. I look at hopefully both these teams come out of this game healthy too. That's the big one. I think that's in a non-conference this late in the year. You don't want to go up and make a 11-hour trip and lose one of your best players, or you don't want to host the number 1 team in the state and lose somebody. So we're just hoping both teams stay healthy, but looking forward to a great football game Friday night.
Yeah, when you look at winning percentage of the opponents that Sugar has played this year, I'm doing some math on the fly here. 7, 9, 10, 14, 3, 6, 8 and 14. Yeah. No, wait, 10 and 14 Sugar's opponents this year. Yeah. So they've sprinkled in some good, Templeton, California. They're pretty decent. Star Valley, Wyoming, always winning championships over in Wyoming, but that's Wyoming football. Shelley's good. Century, Marsh Valley, not so much, but we'll see.
So it's going to be interesting. Timberlake, the way they scheduled, there's only so much you can do in 3A football in North Idaho. You're going to play a smattering of Washington schools and, maybe a Montana school and, some of the 4As, but they still have a game against Lakeland coming up later in the year too. And that's a, in school district rivalry. Not obviously the same classification, but there's still a lot to play for both these teams. It's a meaningful game, but it's also meaningless at the same time. So it's just looking forward to a great game Friday night. And I'm excited to be on the call with Lance.
Yep. And then 5A, 4A Inland Empire League. We've got one more week of these cross-pollination matchups where, Sandpoint's playing Lake City.
Yeah.
Sandpoint's playing Lakeland. We will have Moscow at Lewiston on IdahoSports.com. Lewiston, I think, favorite coming in, but I think this game could be closer than people think.
So Lewiston's real. I mean, Sandpoint. What?
Yeah.
I mean, I was just looking at that game and it's like Sandpoint, beat Lewiston fairly convincingly in that one. And it's like, where's that Sandpoint team been? And so I think it took a little bit of a shakeup. Homedale, we saw beat them, 2 years ago, and then Sandpoint goes on that run to where they made it all the way to the state championship game. You look at this one, they took it on the chin to Homedale again last weekend. They come back and they beat Lewiston. They've got, Sandpoint's playing Lake City this weekend. Lewiston, I mean, if they're going to have any hope of being in the playoffs, they have to basically win the IEL at this point in order to make it in. I mean, Hottinger is a great QB. He's got some studs around it, but they're going to have to get a complete effort out of that receiving crew and out of that offensive line. Defensively, they've been pretty porous, and that's, I think, where you've been seeing some of these question mark scores that make you kind of scratch your head a little bit.
Yeah, Lewiston's 2 wins came against Clarkston, which is what's the size disparity there?
They are a little bit smaller than Lakeland. So yeah.
Okay. And Pendleton, the Buckaroos, which is way smaller than Lewiston. Yeah. So
yeah, they're about the same size. So
yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I'll
be very. I should say. So yeah.
Yes, I'll be very interested to see how Lewiston does, and how Moscow does, because Moscow, I think, is obviously playing much better than
they playing better. I mean, they played Lake City pretty tough for the first half last week until Lake City pulled away late. The athletes, I think, got them, but I think the intriguing matchups too this weekend. I mean, you got a great one. Mount Spokane playing at Post Falls is going to be a phenomenal football game. That is going to be. That's the one on the calendar. If you're wanting to go to a game this weekend, that game's at Post Falls. That is one I think you pay the admission to go see that one in person. If you're not going to head up to Timberlake. Coeur d'Alene playing at Union in Vancouver is going to be a great game too. Lakeland against their bye week. I look at that one, and that's going to be an interesting matchup. Lakeland's got to get healthy, man. If they're going to have a stretch run in the IEL and the 4A, they've got to get healthy this week, and they've got to fix some things. So it should be interesting, I think, to seeing that team and who shows up, in their next game. They're going to be playing Sandpoint. So that's next week. So that's going to be an interesting next couple of weeks up here in North Idaho. You're getting into IEL play in the 4As and 5As, and there's going to be some black and blue games.
Definitely. And we should mention quickly the IHSAA meeting that was held yesterday in Pocatello. There were a ton of single sport petitions for schools that want to move up or down. In North Idaho specifically, Moscow gets approved to drop down to Class 4A next year. Class 4A.
They'll be with Bonners Ferry and Timberlake,
which I don't think they're thrilled about. But hey, Timberlake just beat Moscow by 10, so let's do it again next year.
I mean, it's Wood River was doing the same thing, and Caldwell's been kind of teetering that line as well. So it's not uncommon to see that. I called it last year. I thought that they would have done it this year, but they didn't. Competitively, I see it as a logical move for the Bears, but the way they're getting better too, I don't know if they need to necessarily, but that's just my 2 cents.
Could be a brief sojourn. And then at the 5A level, Post Falls petitioned down to 5A in both boys and girls soccer and got the green light. So next year you are going to have in soccer specifically, Ryan, at 6A, Coeur d'Alene and Lake City. And that's it. Yeah. And then you will have a 5-team conference in District 4 or for Class 5A.
District 2, in 5A.
With Sandpoint, Lakeland, Moscow, Lewiston, and Post Falls. Hey, can that league get more than just one bid to state?
I believe it would. Is anybody getting by Sandpoint? So,
right.
Petition down all you want. You still got Sandpoint and Moscow sitting there. So, it's kind of a moot point, but yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out. I painstakingly went through every sport, every division, and showed what the new divisions will look like on each sport. Also, all the schools that were denied or approved petitions. It's all on the homepage at IdahoSports.com. Please.
That's what I just
Please go read it. I spent so much time on it, and I won't get paid this month unless a lot of people go read it.
Get Brandon some clicks. Let's go. You can do it. Head on over IdahoSports.com, right up there in that search bar up there, and then it's right on the homepage. Go there. Yeah.
Yes.
No, it's a great article, and but it leaves the question to me of why couldn't we push for a football only classification system? But
I think it's coming. We get, you know how it goes. Everything's very slow and gradual and baby steps, but I do see a path where one day we do get to football only classifications, and then we get rid of this nonsense. Get rid of the
promotion relegation system, no classifications.
That would be interesting.
That would get ugly really fast, but yeah, I'd say that jokingly because
Wood River just keeps moving down until they're playing 8-man.
That's right. Yeah.
Although, you know what? They did that during COVID. Because I know this isn't Magic Valley, but Wood River and Cary are in the same school district, and they had by far the strictest school district during the pandemic of like, you can't play anybody, COVID super spreader. And so they finally were like, well, do you guys just want to play each other? Like, we can't go travel anywhere. But you're talking about a 4A versus a 1A D2. So they came up with, okay, well, when Wood River has the ball, we'll play 11-man football. When Cary has the ball, we'll play 8-man football. Cary won like 45-0.
Oh yeah.
Just saying.
That doesn't surprise me. Yeah, it wouldn't bode well. Yeah.
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 Anyways,
we'll see some relegation. We'll see teams. I don't want to poke fun at any in particular team, but yeah, that's.
I only said Wood River because they were the first team to actually do it. That's the only example I have right now.
There's probably very few Wood River people listening to this Prepcast anyway. So, they're in their ivory towers in Haley and Bellevue. So
oh man, now you're really coming with. All right. Let's pump the brakes here.
I say that jokingly. Good grief. But yeah.
Yes. 3 great football games for you this Friday. Kendrick versus Butte County should be 3:30. Double check that on IdahoSports.com. And then North Idaho game night, Sugar Salem at Timberlake at 7:00 and Moscow at Lewiston at 7:00 as well. Enjoy the competitions this weekend, everybody. For Ryan Scaggs, I'm Brandon Baney. We'll see you next time on IdahoSports.com.